Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. Before we start with our today's analysis, a quick gentle reminder. Byjus Exam Prep IAS is now on Telegram. If you've not yet joined the channel, please do join so that you get all the current affairs related updates. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says upholding the autonomy of the Election Commission. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have the Election Commission of India. The Election Commission of India draws its authority from the Constitution of the country. We have Article 324 of the Indian Constitution. It speaks about superintendence, direction, control of elections is vested in the Election Commission of India. To run the operations of the Election Commission, what we have is the election commissioners. We have the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner. We also have the election commissioners as well. The Chief Election Commissioners and election commissioners are appointed by the President. So it is the President who makes an appointment for a tenure of about 6 years, or this person will be appointed up to the age of 65, whichever is earlier. And when it comes to the advantages and independence given to the election commissioner, they enjoy the same status, salary, perks as that of the judges of the Supreme Court of India. So this article here is primarily speaking about the appointment procedure of the election commissioners, and recently the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court of India heard a crucial case about the method by which the Election Commission of India is constituted and the election commissioners appointed. So this article is primarily speaking about that there were a number of cases that were filed in the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India is listening to the cases about the appointment procedure of the election commissioners, and in all likelihood it may give us a judgment in the month of January. So this article here is primarily speaking about whether this appointment procedure that is currently being made by the President means equivalent to the Council of Ministers, is it right or wrong, is what is this article all about. Let us try and understand in detail a larger picture about this article. When it comes to the classical idea of democracy, we have three organs of the state. Which are the three organs? We have legislature, we have executive, we also have the judiciary. The legislature make the law, the executive implement the law, and judiciary interpret the law. When it comes to the implementation, what we have is number of bodies. For example, we have the National Human Rights Commission, we also have the UPSC as well, we also have the Election Commission of India, which is also an executive body. When it comes to such body, for example the Election Commission of India, when you consider the classical idea of democracy, they are usually under the control of the executive. So the classical idea of democracy, or the paradigm of democracy according to the classical theory, goes on to say that if there is an administrative body, if there is an implementing body, this implementing and the administrative body is usually appointed by the executive, and all the operations of this body comes under the political control of the political executive. That is what is the classical model of democracy. However, the author goes on to say we have to change with changing times. In the contemporary scenario, what these executive bodies, that is the implementational and the administrative bodies, should not directly report to the executive. Instead, what they should have is an arm's length operations from the executive, and they should be given more independence, and as a result these bodies are what are called as the fourth branch institutions or the integrity institutions. So the question is, what is this fourth branch institutions? In the Indian context, institutions of the fourth branch include Election Commission, Lokpal, Central Bureau of Investigation, Reserve Bank of India, National Statistics Commission, National Human Rights Commission, Information Commission, Commissions for various marginalized groups, Central Vigilance Commission, Comptroller and Auditor General, Attorney General, Public Service Commission, University Grants Commission, Finance Commission, Niti Aayog, Media Regulators, and many others. So what are these fourth branch institutions? Let me simplify this process for you. We have the Election Commission of India. The Election Commission of India is appointed by the government, which means the president goes about appointing indirectly indirectly it is the Council of Ministers, which means it is the government. What is the role of the Election Commission of India? The Election Commission of India ensures that there are periodic elections that happens in the country. So the Election Commission of India will have to be independent. It should not support one political party. But who is making the appointment? When it comes to the appointment, it is made by the government. For all cases until now, the Election Commission of India has always been neutral in most of the scenarios. There have been election commissioners as well, like Session, who were able to impose the authority of the Election Commission of India. But let's say in a hypothetical situation, because it is the government making the appointments, what if the election commissioners stand in favor of the government? So it is in this particular backdrop, despite being an administrative and the implementing agencies, these bodies should be completely away from the executive. So this article says if an appointment is being made to such offices, what we require is the support of the opposition political party. We also will require the speaker. It will also require some guidelines which have to be given so that this particular election commission acts in an independent manner. As of now, since the appointment is being made by the executive, as of now, there are no issues in the past. They have been able to maintain the neutrality, non-partisanship, impartiality. But what if they have a reciprocity quid pro quo, that it is because this political party has appointed them? What if they go on to become and support this political party? In order to avoid it, in the contemporary times, in the modern times, these executive agencies should have an arm's length distance and they have to be completely independent. So their appointment procedure should also be neutral and should not be with the executive, says the author. This is where the author also takes another example as well. We have the information commissions. The information commission, let's say we have the RTI, the right to information. The right to information is where, let's say for example, you want to seek some information, I want to seek some information. What do? We ask this information from one of the government departments. This information that is given by the public information officer might be against the government. In this case, those governments which are in power, they wouldn't want to reveal such information because it could become a threat to their operations. So in these cases, if the information commissioner is appointed by the government, do you think that they would be able to do justice? No, they may appoint such person who will listen to the government. So in this particular case, this entire RTI, the right to information, where information is sought out, will not be an effective exercise. Instead, it will be a toothless tiger, says this article. Similarly, we also have the Central Bureau of Investigation as well. In the past, we have the Supreme Court of India, which is called the CBI, the caged parrot, because it happens to listen to the government. So all this means the fourth branch institutions, the integrity institutions, should not only be deriving its powers or appointment made by the executive. Instead, it should have a larger canvas where opposition is taken into picture. You also have the speaker or any other person with integrity, and you also require some judicial officers like the Supreme Court judges, is what is this article all about. In order to take an inspiration, we have number of examples in number of countries. For example, the South African and Kenyan constitutions have dedicated constitutional provisions for fourth branch institutions such as human rights commissions, election commissions and so on, calling these integrity institutions and requiring them to be independent. The appointment process for such bodies normally involves multiple stakeholders from different wings of the state. This is what the author is trying to say. He says that whenever you're making an appointment to the election commission, that is, the election commissioners are appointed. Who is making it right now? It is the executive. He is appointed by the president. President indirectly means the Council of Ministers. This should not be the way, but instead what we require is all the organs represented. Let's say we come up with a committee, and this particular committee also has the leader of opposition. Then there is also the prime minister or anyone from the government, and we also have one from the judiciary. Let's say for example the CJI or any of the judges nominated by the CJI. So one representing from the Supreme Court or the judiciary. If they are present in that case, then there might not be quid pro procure is another recommendation. So this article goes on to say that as the South African Constitutional Court correctly noted in one of the landmark judgments, true and functional independence is effectively impossible if the power to appoint rests entirely with a single individual, office or entity. This then is the foundation of the ongoing dispute before the Supreme Court, says the author. As of now, it is being made by the government, that is president appoints, which means the council of ministers. It is with one single office. This should not be the way. Instead, what we require is a larger picture that has to be considered, says the author. In fact, in the landmark Vinith Narayan case, the Supreme Court likewise held that for the rule of law to prevail, the appointment of the CBI director would have to be ratified by a three-member body that included Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and the Chief Justice of India. So similar such attempts will also have to be taken with respect to the Election Commission of India, says the author. So the appointment processes involve the government, the opposition, independent experts and judicial experts in a manner that no one center of power has dominance or a veto is one of the recommendation given by the author. So this particular case is right now in the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India in all likelihood will deliver its judgment in the month of January. So the Supreme Court should not overstep its jurisdiction. Instead, must give the basic fundamental guidelines. These guidelines will have to be followed by the legislature and ultimately, as we just discussed, come up with a committee so that everyone is representative of it and there is due process, rule of law that is followed when it comes to the appointment procedure of the election commissioners for the country. So this article goes on to conclude for all fourth branch institutions which are called as integrity institutions, they might be administrative and implementing agencies despite the classical form of democracy saying that it is the role of the executive to appoint, but in the contemporary times you require a larger mechanism where all three organs of the state will have to be present and they make the appointment so that there is arm's distance for these implementing agencies away from the executive is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the new normal in the Indo-Pacific contestation. The article here is speaking about the disputes that China can create when it comes to South Asia and also in the Indo-Pacific region. China of late has been very aggressive. It has had skirmishes with number of countries in the Indo-Pacific region, in the South China Sea, but the author also says with special emphasis to the Indian Ocean region and the South Asia, what we have to be ready is for the larger challenges thrown by China. Let us try and understand what is the author trying to say. When you look at India, what exactly is happening? India is the powerhouse of South Asia. So to give a counter to India, what we have is China coming and operating in the Indian Ocean region. So the contestation for South Asia and Indian Ocean is not new. China has long tried to mark its influence in these regions and enhance its strategic ambitions, namely to limit Indian influence, military power, status, and to sustain its energy supply and also economic growth. So what is China doing? China is reaching out to all countries as well. In fact, it is reaching out to Nepal, it is reaching out to Bangladesh, and it has a good friend in the form of Pakistan as well. It is trying to reach and also come up with this theory of string of pearls where it is trying to encircle India from all directions as well. So Beijing's outreach in South Asia increased manifold in the early 2000s with its economic boom. It began to further its strategic ends in the region through loans, financial incentives, mega infrastructure project, and this became more institutionalized with the launch of the Belt and the Road Initiative in 2013. Subsequently, these investments enabled Beijing to access the Indian Ocean, promote political and security ties in the region, harbor military vessels, submarines, and take certain islands and ports on lease, and one such example is the Hambantota port of Sri Lanka. So what is China trying to do? China is trying to restrict the power of India, and at the same time, because of its economic boom, because of the larger economic prospects it has seen, it is also giving loans to the people, grants to the countries so that they tilt in favor of China. The example can be Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. China has also made huge investments in Maldives as well. It has made made huge investments in Sri Lanka as well. So all these countries have tilted right now towards China. Has India kept quiet? No. India is also trying to counter China as well. So what are the investments that India has made? In the Maldives, New Delhi is reciprocating President Ibrahim Solih's India First policy with massive economic assistance, grants, infrastructure projects, and by also cooperating on the maritime security. In Nepal, Prime Minister Tebo's government has attempted to improve Nepal's overall bilateral relations with India. India is also assisting Nepal as well in terms of the growth prospects in crisis in Sri Lanka. Besides, this year alone has provided economic and humanitarian assistance and investments worth $4 billion. And India's leading efforts in South Asia and the Indian Ocean have also attracted other Quad members as well. We know for the fact that we have good relationship with America, Australia as well as with Japan. Inspired by what India is doing in the Indian Ocean with all the South Asian countries, these countries are also inspired and they are also adding value in the South Asian part. Japan is finalizing its talks with Sri Lanka on debt restructuring. In Maldives, Australia and United States of America have committed to opening their embassies and new areas of cooperation in 2020. The US signed a defense and security framework with the Maldives as well. Earlier this year, Nepal also ratified the US Millennium Challenge cooperation, much to China's displeasure, while India is trying to convince its neighbors to give push to India and also establish their own foreign relations. These countries are also investing in South Asian countries. Does this mean that China is going to be stopped? Does it mean China is going to hold on? No. China will further increase its economic advantages, cooperation, grants with all these countries, and it will further want to have its imprint in the Indian Ocean as well. Recently, because of all these operations done by India and Quad members, what China has been able to do is it has sent its Chinese surveillance vessel Huan Wang 5 where close by to Sri Lanka. Then Huang Wang series entered the Indian Ocean, coinciding with the test flight of the Agni Series 5, and Beijing also hosted its first ever India China Ocean Regional Forum as well. That is because there were new initiatives that were created by the Quad, and we recently concluded Colombo Security Conclave. For every action initiated by these countries of Quad, the opposite reaction and a counter is also coming from China. So with this, what we understand is that China will continue to make massive investments in all these countries despite the Quad members coming together. This is part of India and China. But what about these countries? These countries are swinging both ways with respect to India as well as with China as well. Why? That is because if you look at Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is going through some grave economic crisis. If we look at Bangladesh, what is happening? They recently did ask IMF for the bailout as well. So they also have economic crisis. Pakistan is not able to do well. It has political issues. It also has economic issues as well. So when you look at all these parameters, these countries want support of India. These countries also want support of China as well. And at the same time, in Bangladesh, there is political crisis that is emerging. So in all likelihood, you may also have change of government as well. You may also have new leadership that is coming into place as well. So amidst all this crisis, India and other Quad members should be ready to face the challenges. We have seen Sri Lanka had close cooperation with China. When you look at Maldives, when there was the previous government that was present, it was very close to China. And in Bangladesh, what we have is the Awami League right now. This political party is close to India. But if you have BNP as another political party, then in that case, they may go close to China as well. So there will be change of leadership. There will be change of political ideologies as well. There will be changes on the other fronts on the economic cooperation. If these changes do occur, we have to ensure that we are ready to take up on these challenges. In fact, the political thinkers in India go on to say that we should always be ready for the two front war. But as of now, The major threat for India happens to be China and not Pakistan. Why not Pakistan? Because when it comes to Pakistan, it is already going through an economic turmoil. It also has political crisis as well. And since Taliban is present in Afghanistan, they also have issues with Afghanistan. So Pakistan is already embroiled on the internal front, on the external front. In all likelihood, Pakistan may not be immediate threat to India, but the immediate and aggressive threat can emanate from China. So what we have to do is, since China is ready to take upon India, it is trying to have its imprint in Indian Ocean as well as South Asian countries. We have to cooperate with Quad, and we have to ensure that we have a plan in the pipeline so that if something happens, we already have a plan to give a counter to China, is what is this article all about. So basically, for all the challenges that are thrown open by China in South Asia, we should have answers to those questions, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Rule 267, a bone of contention in Rajya Sabha. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have something called as Rule 267 of the Rajya Sabha that allows for the suspension of the day's business to debate an issue suggested by a member. What do we understand by this? Let's say, for example, in Rajya Sabha, there are series of events that take place. What Rajya Sabha does, it also discusses number of issues. It also discusses number of bills as well. It also discusses about some of the important issues that are happening in the country. But when there is an important issue which is not part of the business, so when you look into the part of the business, you will have at this particular time, this particular issue will be discussed. At so and so time, you will have this particular legislation that will be discussed. So there will be a business operations that will happen for a particular day. But what is this Rule 267? Despite having all these allocations for a day, at so and so time, if there is a matter of urgent importance, all these issues will not be discussed, but whatever has been said by the member about urgent issue, such should be immediately coming into picture. So under Rule 267 of Rajya Sabha's Rule of Procedure and Conduct of Business, there will be a list of business for the day. So these businesses that is actually put up for that particular day will be immediately suspended, and then urgent matter will be taken up. This urgent matter can only be taken up with the approval of the Vice President, that is the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. So do note, so the member can make an appeal under 267 of the Rajya Sabha rules, but only if the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha accepts, this urgent matter can be heard. So you have the business for the day. If there is an urgent matter that the member feels will have to be heard, he makes a proposal. All these businesses will be put aside if the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha accepts. If the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha does not accept, that urgent matter will not be heard in the Rajya Sabha. So this 267 is an extraordinary mechanism which basically allows the opposition to demand that normal business of the Rajya Sabha be set aside so that the House can take upon some of the pressing issues. What is the context right now? That not single notice under this particular rule has been accepted in the winter session. So if you look into the data from the past, as per the statistics, the rule has been invoked 11 times since 1990 for various issues, including Gulf War in 1991 when Sharma was presiding, to debate corruption when Shekhawat was chairman. Under Mr. Hamid Ansari, it was used 4 times to debate the role of CBI in Colgate scam, attack on the secular fabric of the country, agrarian crisis, and demonetization of the currency. The last instance was in 2016 when then Chairman Hamid Ansari allowed for a debate on the demonetization of currency. So from 2016 till date, this idea of quoting 267 by the opposition political parties and the chairman giving consent to it has not happened. So this article goes on to say that opposition's voice is not heard because the chairman, who has the discretion To accept it is not accepting. So Mr. Danka, who happens to be the Rajya Sabha chairman, went on to say that Rule 267 has become known as a mechanism for causing disruption in the Rajya Sabha, which is why he is not accepting. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section. We did discuss about Rule 267 of the Rajya Sabha. Does Lok Sabha have a similar rule? If it is so, which rule are we speaking about? What is the number? Please put it on the comment section. Now let's look into the next article. This article says government hospitals can't insist on voter ID for treatment, says the High Court. What is the context? The Delhi High Court said that the government hospitals in the national capital must provide medical treatment to all citizens irrespective of their place of residence. What is the issue here? There was one of the cases that was filed in the Delhi High Court where one of the petitioners went on to say he is from the state of Bihar. Since he is not from Delhi, he does not carry the election commission's card from Delhi. He is not a voter of Delhi. When he visited one of the government hospitals in Delhi, his MRI appointment was given for a considerable long period, while residents of Delhi were given a much prior appointment despite he going first. So this article currently goes on to say that irrespective of where this person belongs to, if he heads to the national capital region, if he goes to one of the government hospitals that are present in Delhi, this person being the citizen of the country, prioritization should be on the basis of first come first serve basis, and it should not be on the basis of residentship. So if there is a person who's come from a different state or from a different union territory, then such person should also be taken care in the government hospital, says the Delhi High Court. So the Delhi government told the court that its hospitals did not discriminate against patients based on their residence, but the High Court observed they can't insist on voter ID. It added AIMS or any other hospital in Delhi cannot stop citizens from coming to capital to seek treatment, and the court reiterated its earlier judgment where it ruled that insofar as the health treatment is concerned, treatment has to be provided to all citizens without any consideration for their place of residence. So it is not that a Delhi resident is given priority over another person, irrespective of whosoever the person is. If he is a citizen of India, such person's health should be prioritized, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says fluid boundaries. The article here is speaking about interstate dispute between the state of Karnataka and Maharashtra. We have discussed about this issue as part of our big news. For those of you who have not heard about it, please do visit the video and understand and come back to this video. The article here is primarily saying that there are issues between the state of Karnataka and Maharashtra. Then there are issues between the state of Maharashtra and Telangana. Then there are a couple of issues in northeastern states as well. For all these issues that are existing along the boundary areas between two different states, what we can only do is come up with a political consensus and do not continue with the divisive politics. If divisive politics continue, there will be loss of lives, there will be loss of economic activity, people will lose on their front, and the bonhomie that exists between the states will ultimately also go for a toss. Since we are all part of one single country, the great country India, what we have to do is bring up the political consensus and not keep fighting. Added to it, if you look at India, most of the states in India might be based on the language. For example, when you look at the state of Kerala, what you have is Malayalam to be a major language. If you look at Tamil Nadu, the major language happens to be Tamil. If you look at Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, major language happens to be Telugu. If you look at Karnataka, major language happens to be Kannada. And if you look at Maharashtra, it happens to be Marathi. So what you have is linguistic states that are designed. But for us to go ahead and say that this has to be further increased, that we have to have a clear-cut demarcation of boundary cannot happen, because there will be linguistic minorities in few states, and this is bound to create some issues. But for all these issues, a political consensus will have to be taken up and ultimately will have to be settled. So from 1956, we have the State Reorganization Act. Whatsoever is the demarcation, the same demarcation will have to be accepted, and minorities, that is linguistic minorities, will have to be supported within the same state, is what is this article all about. So fighting will take us nowhere, and ultimately we have to settle down the differences is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. The existing system where the executive has absolute power over appointments to the Election Commission of India is unsatisfactory, has been historically problematic and damages the rule of law. Discuss. With tensions between an aggressive China and an emerging India intensifying, there will be significant changes and challenges in the Indian Ocean and South Asian regions examined. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and if you wish to upload an image, you can also visit the free IAS prep website and upload an image as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.